Welcome to our Adult Sunday School class for August 9th of 2026. We are going through the timeline of the Lord's people, and we have arrived in the early parts of the book of Joshua as he has taken the mantle from Moses and is getting ready to lead the people across the Jordan River, actually through the Jordan River on dry land, to set up shop in Gilgal to be ready to take on Jericho. So that's where we are headed for this morning's look. So we will be in Joshua chapter 1. Grab the screen here. All right, so let's see here. So mentioned that at this time frame, we are in the spring of the year 1406 BC, and that Sheshi is the foreign early Hyksos, lesser Hyksos ruler of Egypt right now. And let me zoom into about here. And so a little more. Okay. So, and here's Egypt right here. And so one thing I didn't mention last time, go ahead and share this here. So just a little tidbit about Sheshi. Again, he's a foreigner, non-Egyptian who came in. Sheshi, and a lot of today's thoughts beyond the Bible will come from Egyptologist David Roll and his various books. Sheshi, this outside foreigner who came in to dominate and lead Egypt, his wife and possibly chief queen, Queen Taudi, was of Cushite or Nubian origin. This area highlighted along the Nile here is the area outline of Nubia. So it includes Egypt in the north, Sudan in the south here. So here's the area of Nubia. So this foreign guy coming in, he took a wife from this southern area here, Queen Taudi, possibly his chief queen. She's Cushite or Nubian. And she's got a group of those scarab seals identical to his. They have a son named Nehesi. Now that's a strange name for someone from the north here, ruling in the north here, because Nehesi means southerner or black man. And so he's the oldest son of Queen Taudi, who would have been darker skinned coming from further south here. And Nehesi, would be the crown prince of Sheshi, who's going to be ruling for a while. And Sheshi has another prince and possible son also named Ipku. So just a little interesting tidbit there about Sheshi, who is again mentioned in the Bible. And we'll talk more about him as we go on in Joshua. So there is that little bit, and we're going to be picking up in Joshua chapter 1 here. Another thought about these guys, let me back out of there for the moment, back to this area here. So these Hyksos that are ruling here, maybe from Sheshi on forward, they are actually of Phoenician stock. This area, modern Lebanon, is Bible times Phoenicia. So they had come from up there and come on down. And the Phoenicians came from Anatolia over here, and back in the way early days came around from Bahrain and all that. A lot of connections between Phoenicia and Bahrain, which are really fascinating. We talked about way back long ago. Now talking about Egypt here and this time of Sheshi, something we have here that would carry on for another 500 years. 500 years after Sheshi, we have the time of Ramses the Great. During the time of Ramses the Great, one of the Egyptian gods, Seth, is very much associated with the sea here. And this god Seth, his association with the sea here at the time of Ramses the Great, that traces back 500 years to the time we're in now, the time of Sheshi here. And Seth being linked with the sea. In this Hyksos area, when they were doing a lot of trade, we mentioned Byblos and Ugarit up here, again, Phoenicia area, Lebanon, Syria, and whatnot. And so Seth being identified with Baal, who we hear a lot about in the Bible, one of the things they have in common is protection of sailors. And so that makes sense with all the sea trade that's going on here. Sheshi's capital, as I mentioned, was here in Sherahan. He was ruling long distance over Egypt. That's how weak they were. He was able to rule long distance. And there was a temple built in Avaris where the Israelites had left, and they came in and built upon it. There was a temple there built for Seth, also known as Baal, and it was painted blue. Maybe the color of the sky, but it's also the color of the sea, and kind of works for a storm god of both the sky and the sea. So this worship of this god Seth or Baal that was happening during the time of Sheshi here will continue for at least 500 years on into the time of Ramses the Great. So that's going on at this time we're looking at with Joshua. So if you have your handy-dandy outlines that were handed out, we are under the letter A, conquest of Canaan. Number 1, Israel prepares to invade. We covered letter A under that, God instructs Joshua. And now we'll be moving on to the next part, part B, Joshua instructs the people. So I mentioned 1406 BC. In fact, we're going to be picking up in Joshua chapter 1, we're going to be picking up on Tuesday on the Hebrew calendar, Nisan the 4th. On our calendar, it's April the 20th of the year 1406 BC, as we're counting down to the Passover. Do you have something, Brother Clay?
No.
Okay, the finger there. Okay. So, 1406 BC, April, springtime, puts us in, we're Middle Bronze Age, level 2B. China, as we looked at, being led by Emperor Huairen of the Shang dynasty. And as we mentioned, Mibri Sheshi is the pharaoh of Egypt's 14th dynasty, early or Lesser Hyksos, during Egypt's low point, the Second Intermediate Period. Babylon over here, being led by King Ammi-Saduga. And with the Lord's people here, with Joshua on the eastern side of the Jordan River, over here in the area known as Abel Shittim, we have Eliezer is the high priest now, son of Aaron, who has died. And in the line of Christ in the tribe of Judah, we have a young man by Salmon. I guesstimate his age about 19 now. Salmon is the 29th generation of Adam. Salmon's going to be father to Boaz, and he's going to be second great-grandpa to David. So that's what we've got going on here. Let's pick up in Joshua chapter 1, verse 10. Let's read to the end of the chapter. Get the setting here. Now they are in this area here, as I mentioned, Abel Shittim. So they are over here. So here's the area of Abel Shittim where they are. Here's Jericho. And up here is Gilgal. Well, they'll be crossing the Jordan and setting shop up here. And from Gilgal, they will come into Jericho and go from there. This is the Dead Sea. This is the Jordan River. Sea of Galilee will be up here. And this is the Mediterranean right there. So here is where they are right now. We're on April 20th, Nisan the 4th, 1406 BC. Joshua 1 verse 10 is taking place. So let's read Joshua 1:10 to the end of the chapter. Joshua 1 verse 10. Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, saying, pass through the midst of the camp, and command the people, saying, prepare provisions for yourselves, for within 3 days you are going to cross this Jordan. To take possession of the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess it. But to the Reubenites, to the Gadites, and to the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the word which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, saying, the Lord your God is giving you rest, and will give you this land. Your wives, your little ones, and your livestock shall remain in the land which Moses gave you beyond the Jordan, but you shall cross ahead of your brothers in battle formation, all your valiant warriors, and shall help them, until the Lord gives your brothers rest, as he is giving you, and they also possess the land which the Lord your God is giving them. Then you may return to your own land, and take possession of that which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you beyond the Jordan toward the sunrise. Verse 16, they answered Joshua, saying, all that you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go. Just as we obeyed Moses in all things, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Anyone who rebels against your command and does not obey your words and all that you command him shall be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. So Joshua is telling the people, get ready. In 3 days, we're going to be over here getting ready to cross the Jordan. And to the Reubenites, Gadites, and half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua says something. So why is he talking to them? Because these 2.5 tribes had decided that they were going to have their inheritance on this side of the Jordan River instead of that side where the rest of Canaan and the Promised Land is. Their agreement was they would leave their children and their livestock behind, and the men would come and fight with the rest of the brothers and kind of clear out Canaan for them. Then they would go back home. And so if they're faithful to that commitment to do that, then amen, when all said and done, they could go back home, and this would be their land, while the other 9.5 tribes were over here. And they all agreed. In fact, to the point where they said in verse 18, anyone who doesn't obey will be put to death. Keep in mind, whenever we see mention of death, penalty of death in these things, that every individual is agreeing to the covenant here that was established at Sinai, renewed with the new generation here in these plains of Moab, here at Abel Shittim. And they are voluntarily agreeing to this, to be in this covenant relationship that does have some consequences if they don't live up to it. And so some of these death penalties would be part of that because it is a commitment. But remember, they voluntarily, no one is subject to a death penalty for something they did not voluntarily commit to. And so this was all, they said, yes, we want to be a part of this, and we are willing to put our lives on the line to do this. So, reactions, thoughts, comments, questions on getting the people ready and what Joshua is saying to the other 2.5 tribes and their response to Joshua on this. All good? Sister Carolyn.
Why did they decide not to go into the ones that stayed on the other side, or was that just temporary?
Why did they decide that, or was it just temporary? I'll answer the second one first. It is not temporary. It is actually permanent. And they decided it because they had conquered this area first, getting ready to cross and conquer over here. And after they conquered all this, Og and Sihon and all of that, they said, you know what? This is pretty good here. We got what we need here. We're okay with this. And so they approached Moses with that, and Moses said, I don't. And then so after talking with God, and they all kind of came together, they said, hey, we all agree the battle is still over here. We're not going to, and Moses was a little upset. He's like, you're going to dishearten and discourage your brother by plopping your rear ends down here when we got battles to fight over there. They said, oh, no, we're still going to fight with our brothers. We're committed. We're good on that. We're just, when all is said and done, we would like this to be our home. And he said, as long as you're in the fight, we're all in the fight together, then okay, once the fight is done, yeah, you want to set up here, fine and dandy. So that was kind of how it came about. No. God had gave them let me put it this way. God led them in clearing this out, and in battle and possible reasons for it are a couple. Battle training these people, this generation coming out, who had pretty much been born and raised in the desert, or were just babies at the time of the Exodus, and now they're, because if they were 20 years old and upward at the time of the curse of the generation, 20 years old and upward were cursed to die off. But if you were under that, so you could be 19 years old at the time of the Exodus and the curse, and then come out. So all you've known is slavery in Egypt, and then God's great deliverance, but you haven't gone into battle. So it could be a couple things. God was giving them the confidence and assurance of leading them in battle over here. Plus, he was instilling further fear in the others. Not only is what happened at the Exodus and the sea crossing world news, but also their success in dealing with these people, Og and Sihon, dealing with the Moabites who had cursed them when they had tried to get Balaam to curse them. And that didn't work, and they ended up wiping out those people. So that dominance and that consistent victory that the Lord had provided was part of God's plan, not to give them in this land permanently, was the original goal. The original goal was to build their confidence in battle as they followed him, and to instill fear in the others as they see Israel dominating. And so the land was kind of an afterthought. Well, wow, we're here. This is pretty good. When all is said and done, as long as we are still with everyone this way, can we park here? And God and Moses had no problem with that, as long as they were committed in the fight. So yeah, kind of an interesting setup there. Anything else from anyone on that part? Let's move on to Rahab. So number C, Rahab protects the spies. Let's read chapter 2, and let's read almost up to the end. So yeah, verse 21. So let's read the first 21 verses of chapter 2. Joshua chapter 2, verse 1. Then Joshua, the son of Nun, sent 2 men as spies secretly from Shittim, saying, go view the land, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and rested there. But it was told to the king of Jericho, saying, behold, men from the sons of Israel have come here tonight to spy out the land. And the king of Jericho sent word to Rahab, saying, bring out the men who have come to you, who have entered your house, for they have come to spy out all the land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. And she said, yes, The men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. It came about, when it was time to shut the gate at dark, that the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them." But she had brought them up to the roof and hidden them in the stalks of flax which she had laid out in order on the roof. So the men pursued them on the road to the Jordan, to the crossing places. As soon as those who were pursuing them had gone out, they shut the gate. Verse 8. Now before the spies lay down, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, "I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the terror of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land have despaired because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of Boundary Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. When we heard these reports, our hearts melted, and no courage remained in anyone any longer because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and on earth below. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord, since I have dealt kindly with you, that you also will deal kindly with my father's household, and give me a pledge of truth. And spare my father and my mother, and my brothers and my sisters, and all who belong to them, and save our lives from death." So the men said to her, "Our life for yours, if you do not tell this business of ours. And it shall come about, when the Lord gives us the land, that we will deal kindly and faithfully with you." 15. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was on the city wall, so that she was living on the wall. And she said to them, "Go to the hill country, so that the pursuers will not encounter you, and hide yourselves there for 3 days until the pursuers return. Then afterward you may go on your way." And the men said to her, "We shall be exempt from this oath to which you have made us swear, unless, when we come into the land, you tie this cord of scarlet thread in the window through which you let us down, and gather into your house your father, your mother, and your brothers, and all your father's household. And it shall come about that anyone who goes out of the doors of your house outside will have his blood on his own head, and we will be innocent. But anyone who is with you in the house, his blood will be on our head, if a hand is laid on him. But if you tell this business of ours, then we shall be exempt from the oath which you have made us swear." She then said, "According to your words, so be it." So she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window. So we'll stop there. So, initial reactions or thoughts on this interaction of these 2 spies with Rahab. All good, pretty straightforward. Couple observations. So, it's going to be a big deal, right, when, spoiler alert, God parts the Jordan like he parted the Exodus Sea, and they walk across on dry land. It's going to be pretty spiffy. It's going to be a big deal, right? How did these 2 guys get across before that happened? How did these 2 spies get across the Jordan before that happened? There's a thinker.
The Jordan Bridge.
The Jordan Bridge. Brother Clay is right. Look at verse 7. So the men pursued them on the road to the Jordan to the crossing places. And as soon as those who were pursuing them had gone out, they shut the gate. So there already were established crossing places for the Jordan River, like bridges. Absolutely. Aha. So when the Lord parts the waters of the river Jordan, and this is going to be important for our understanding and perspective here, it's not because there were no other places to cross the Jordan. There are a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences between the Exodus Sea crossing of Boundary Sea, Yam Suf in Hebrew, and the Jordan River here with Joshua. A lot of similarities that are all kind of obvious, but what are some of the differences? The crossing of Yam Suf, the Boundary Sea, was, as we recognize it, the Gulf of Aqaba. That was 9.5 miles across. This is not that. It was also thousands of feet deep. This is not that. And so it's not that it's less impactful. It was less of a physical feat, but it was no less of a spiritual feat because it was the Lord's deliverance and it was the Lord showing them as I was with the prior generation with Moses, so I am with you, and leading them in a very similar way. And we'll see the memorial stones both left in the water, standing out, and then those put on the side that are to be markers of this major event here. So God didn't part the Jordan River because there were no bridges or crossing places. There were, clearly from that verse, and clearly the spies used them. God will be parting the Jordan River for other reasons, showing his leadership, showing his presence, and showing that his faithfulness since the Exodus sea crossing and all that. So kind of worth mentioning there before we get there. Let's see. Notice that she says, kind of like we were talking, that everyone. So here's Jericho right here. So they're saying that everyone's afraid because they've heard about what happened at the boundary sea in verse 20. They've heard how the Lord dried up the water. So it's world news. It's reached their ears. And not only that, but their defeat of the kings on the other side of the Jordan River, Og and Sihon and whatnot. So she says in verse 11, our hearts melted and no courage remained in anyone any longer because of your God. We're here, the Israelites being told from Moses and Joshua on down to the people, be strong and courageous. Here in Jericho, they have no courage. Their hearts melted within them, no courage remained. So what a contrast. So this is a big deal, them coming here and what's been known. So it mentions in verse 15, she let them down by the rope through the window. Her house was on the city wall, so that she was living on the wall. And so, of course, I have to, because I can't let the dad joke not pass me by. Her little dwelling place, it wasn't much. It was just a little hole in the wall. So there's that.
Unless I missed it, what, I forgot. Why did they pick her, go directly to her?
We're not told. Brother Class, why did they pick her and go directly to her? We're not told anything other than what exactly are we told? We're told to go to Jericho in verse 1 of chapter 2. Let's see. They were sent as spies, and it just says, and in the same verse, they went. And then basically they entered the house of prostitution. So it doesn't show that they had any prior knowledge of her. These are spies sent out to gain prior knowledge. So this is their first encounter. And so they didn't know anyone. And so someone who knows a lot of people and knows what's happening in the town is the prostitute. And so that was kind of a...
Possibly you could have more, better response from somebody that's on the land themselves. You know, that you could persuade them to hide us or whatever, you know, because they're not, you know, on the up and up themselves. Like, I don't know.
The advantage of the strategical advantage of Rahab and her place was she was on the wall on the outskirts versus the deeper in, the more vulnerable you are. And so they're still kind of on the outside, and being on the wall, with the wall, especially if she's near the gate, you see the comings and goings. And of course, in her line of work, men talk. And so, yeah. And so she's more... has more of a ground level sense of the state of the city, and it would be a reliable source for that, especially when she is in the condition she is in and is saying, hey, not only me, but the whole town is feeling this. Here's where we're at right now. And so she then acts to preserve herself and her own family and humbles herself and, you know, puts herself in their hands, basically. So, yeah, pretty significant there that she did that. Now, obviously, God wasn't surprised by any of this. He knew all of this would happen. Could he have done certain things and made Rahab's place more eye-catching or available or something? Could God have had a hand in leading these two spies? We're not told who they are. There's some thought that it may have been Salmon as one of them, maybe, who would end up marrying Rahab. Maybe not. We can't say for sure. Possible. It could be how they met, but we don't know, so we can't say for sure. Just a possibility. But God could very much have had a hand in the coming together of these events, knowing that Rahab would end up being an ancestor of Joseph, and therefore through him Jesus Christ. Joseph who would marry Mary and all of that. So we have that. When it says she tied the scarlet cord in the window and they told her to put the cord in the window, we often have the image of our heads of kind of like Rapunzel's hair, the cord coming down, hanging down from the window. Doesn't necessarily say that could be the case. The main thing is this is in the window, so it's there to be seen. There's the main thing there. And folks have made a spiritual point about the scarlet thread and the blood of Christ and how the commonality of the color, and so saved and delivered, by the scarlet thread. So, yeah,
Easier to spot.
Easier to spot. Absolutely.
Contrast to the
Absolutely.
stone.
There's certainly the practical, realistic element to that too. So here is real quick. Is not much here to see. Abel Shittim, where they are setting up camp right here. Some remnants from various time periods here. But you get an idea. It's pretty much dirt and rocks, and the setting up here. Pottery sherds, again, as we've talked about those. So yeah, that kind of gives us a sense of where they're at as they're getting ready to move closer to the Jordan and cross. So with that, we can go to the book of, hold your place in Joshua 2, we can go to the book of James. And James refers back to Rahab. James chapter 2. And Rahab is one of a few non-Jewish women who are mentioned in Matthew as listed in the genealogy of Joseph, who would marry Mary, who would birth Jesus Christ. So James chapter 2, we can pick up in verse 18. Read to the end of the chapter. James chapter 2, verse 18. James, brother of Jesus, half-brother technically, and pastor of the Jerusalem church, writes this. Again, first New Testament letter written. James 2:18, but some may well say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without the works. I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that God is one. You do well. The demons also believe and shudder. But are you willing to acknowledge, you foolish person, that faith without works is useless? Was our father Abraham not justified by works when he offered up his son Isaac on the altar? You see that faith was working with his works. And as a result of the works, faith was perfected. And the scripture was fulfilled, which says, and Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. And he was called a friend of God. You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. In the same way, was Rahab the prostitute not justified by works also when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way? For just as the body without the spirit is dead, so also faith without works is dead. What do you think James is saying here to the church members who are scattered after Herod Agrippa II had killed the first apostle, James, the brother of John, with the sword? What's James saying here to the scattered church members about faith and works here, in the example of Rahab particularly?
To live, just be, live and act, do work, you don't have to go around boast about your faith, live it.
Don't just go around boasting about your faith, live it. It is to be in action, absolutely. Now, here's the key question here. And forgive me if when we're presenting these things, if I kind of sound like I'm beating a dead horse or kind of harping on something, but it's a very, very important distinction here. Is James talking about salvation, being saved from hell, or is he talking about service? Service, absolutely. Because no works can save us from hell. That's the work of Christ, paid in full, done by him. We can't add to what he already did. And once saved, always saved, because Christ paid it in full. There's nothing we can do or have to do to keep it. It's done. So James is writing to church members who are scattered after the other James, James the brother of John, was martyred. And so to encourage them, this first New Testament scripture is written, and he reminds them that your service of faith must have the works with that. Your faith in service, if it has no works to back it up, that faith of service is dead. Not your saving faith where you believed on Jesus and were saved from hell and guaranteed a spot in heaven, but your life of faith, to Brother Clay's point, is, and he marks Rahab as an example. Rahab was a Gentile, a Canaanite, a Jerichoian. Rahab was not a member of the Lord's people yet. Yet Rahab demonstrated her faith. She believed in the God who had done these things for his people, and she submitted herself to them. So she had faith, and she acted in faith. And he said, was not Rahab justified? Rahab, the Gentile prostitute, was justified, spiritually speaking, because her faith was backed up by action when she hid the spies and sent them safely out another way. So here is a Gentile prostitute woman as a New Testament example of faith that was strong enough to be lived out in her works. Pretty spiffy, huh? Yeah. So there is that. Egyptologist David Roll mentions this about Rahab, her house. The house of Rahab, and they've excavated, and it's kind of interesting when the walls found, because remember her house was on the wall. The walls come tumbling down. There's actually a little section of the wall that doesn't come tumbling down. That's got a little house in it. So there's thought, could that have been Rahab's? That was kind of spared there. The house of Rahab was located in the northern part of the city. There, a lower terrace between the upper city wall and a secondary wall at the bottom of the slope above the outer revetment, I've got visuals to show you all that, contained tightly packed houses of Jericho's lower class citizens. This was the city's red light district. As in other parts of the city, especially on the east side of the hill, the dwellings were built above street level shops and storage rooms. Rahab's house was built against the inner face of the outer wall and immediately above the stone revetment. The spies were let down from a window which looked out over this outer northern wall. And so we have archaeology to kind of back this up, what we're told in the Bible here. So that's kind of spiffy. Anything else from anyone else on Rahab here? All good? All right. Let's move on to number D on our outline, letter D. Spies are hidden 3 days. The end of Joshua chapter 2 here. Getting back to that. Joshua 2:22. So they departed and came to the hill country and remained there for 3 days until the pursuers returned. Now the pursuers had searched for them all along the road, but had not found them. Then the two men returned and came down from the hill country, and they crossed over and came to Joshua the son of Nun. Then they reported to him all that had happened to them. And they said to Joshua, the Lord has indeed handed over to us all the land. Furthermore, all the inhabitants of the land have despaired because of us. So these 3 days were Tuesday through Thursday, Nisan 4th through Nisan 6th. So we've gone April 20th to now Thursday, April 22nd, the third day when they have come back now, as we're getting closer to Passover on the 14th. And so here's what's interesting here about this. So they returned. Let's go here. So here is, again, on the bottom here, this is the area, Abel Shittim, modern Tel El Halman, kind of that area. This line here shows Gilgal's where they're going to end up on the other side of the Jordan River, and here's Jericho. So if they traveled in a straight line, then this would be where they will cross the Jordan. And we're going to see in chapter 3, they're about to move closer to the Jordan and get ready to cross. It's kind of interesting over here, and we'll touch on this again beginning next week. Right over here, we got a place right here called John the Baptist Spring. Of course, it's been more recently marked and whatnot. Of course, we see modern buildings here, but quoting from John, Bethany beyond Jordan. And so some different markers here. And people are getting baptized there in the Jordan River there. In this place that is believed by some to be Bethany beyond Jordan. where John the Baptist was doing his thing. In fact, we can even do this, do a search right here. Bethany. There are two geographical places we're told in John chapter 1 and John chapter 3 where John the Baptist was baptizing. Bethany beyond Jordan, and then Aenon near Salim. So Bethany beyond the Jordan. Oh, look here. Bethany beyond Jordan. Right here. Baptismal site of Jesus Christ is a marker here. Bethany beyond the Jordan here. Notice all of this, as we zoom out here, is right in the area where the Israel, right directly in between Abel Shittim with the Israelites and Jericho on the other side. So interesting that this is recognized as being the spot where John the Baptist was baptizing, where Jesus was baptizing. So here's what I think is kind of an interesting thought, and we'll end on this and pick it up again next week. These folks were crossing the Jordan River to enter the promised land under their God, who was their king. In fact, when they wanted to make, long before Saul and David and Solomon, the united monarchy, during the time of Gideon's victories, they wanted to make Gideon king. And he said, no, God's our king. His son later said, yeah, Abimelech, you can make me king. And that ended horribly after 3 years. But so their understanding in the time of Judges, when they were in the promised land, was that God was their king. This was the kingdom under their king God. So they're crossing the Jordan to enter the kingdom. It's been spiritually said that when we die, we are crossing a spiritual Jordan to enter the eternal promised land. Here, Jesus, it looked like the place where John the Baptist was baptizing, where Jesus was baptized, here at the Jordan, the same place of this crossing. What did Jesus say after his baptism and temptation in the wilderness when he came back? He was preaching the gospel news of the kingdom. He said, repent, for the kingdom is at hand. Well, Jesus is the king. So this Jordan baptism is also symbolizing an entrance into a kingdom, just as the Israelites were entering into the promised land to be under their king. So any initial thoughts or reactions on that concept and comparison here with Joshua and the Israelites, then John the Baptist and Jesus, and our spiritual baptism today? All good? All right, we'll call it quits for there. Let's go ahead and stop that screen share. And we'll stop recording. Let's get ready to go before the Lord in song and praise and worship together.